Hey everyone, so let me ask you something. What if the music you listen to every day wasn't just entertainment? What if it was actually a kind of crystal ball? That's the absolutely wild idea from French economist Jacques Attali that we're going to get into today. See, for Attali, music doesn't just reflect what's happening in society right now. He was convinced it's more like a prophecy, a kind of early warning system for these huge social and economic changes that are just around the corner. And this quote right here, this is the heart of his entire argument. He believed that the very structure of music, how it gets made, how it's shared, how it's sold, is actually a blueprint. It's showing us how our whole society is going to be organized, making the future something we can hear long before we can actually see it. To make his case, Attali basically broke down all of human history into 4 big stages, or ages, of music. And each one shows a totally different relationship between music, power, and us. So let's walk through the roadmap he laid out. All right, first up, we have the most ancient stage, which he called sacrificing. In these really early societies, music wasn't art, it wasn't entertainment, not at all. Its job was way, way more serious. It was a ritual tool, and it was tied directly to violence and keeping society from falling apart. Now, to get this, you have to understand what Attali meant by noise. He didn't just mean loud sounds. To him, noise is chaos. It's violence. It's a direct threat to order. It's this destructive force that every society has to control because it represents the potential for murder and total collapse. So, music's very first job was to take all that dangerous, chaotic noise and, well, tame it by shaping it into a ritual, like a chant or a sacred drumbeat. Music itself became a kind of symbolic sacrifice. It could drain the violence out of the community and make peace possible. Okay, so eventually that whole ritual thing starts to fade, and we move into the second stage, representing. This is where music becomes a product. With the rise of capitalism, music gets yanked out of its sacred role and turned into something that can be performed, watched, and, most importantly, sold. And this was a massive, massive change. I mean, the concert hall is born, and suddenly you have this clear line drawn between the performer and the audience. Music is no longer something everyone does, it becomes a spectacle that you pay to silently watch. This is the exact moment the artist is born, and along with them, a whole new market for their work. But for a long, long time, this artist was basically a servant. I mean, just look at Bach's contract from 1706. It literally told him he had to cultivate the fear of God and avoid bad company. He wasn't some free spirit. He was basically a domestic worker whose music was completely controlled by his boss. But then, of course, we see another shift. People like Mozart start to break away from that old model. They become entrepreneurs, trying to sell their music on an open market. And yeah, that gives them a new kind of freedom, but it also comes with new risks, because now they're totally at the mercy of the economy. And that brings us to the third stage, the one Attali says we're still living in right now, repeating. This entire era was kicked off by one invention that completely blew up the world of live performance, the technology of recording. And man, it all happened so fast. In less than 100 years, we went from music being a fleeting moment to something you could capture, store, and repeat forever. All of a sudden, that unique, one-time-only performance wasn't the main way we experienced music anymore. This totally changed our relationship to music. It went from being a live event that you experience to a personal thing that you own. We started stockpiling music as an object, collecting hours of time on a shelf instead of actually living through it. The whole game shifted from the experience of music to the ownership of it. So if you've got this new market flooded with mass-produced, pretty similar objects, how do you organize it? Well, you create a ranking. Attali says the hit parade isn't just a simple list of what's popular. No, it's an economic tool that's actively creating demand and telling all of us what's supposed to be valuable. The ultimate endpoint of all this repetition is music that isn't even meant to be listened to. And this quote from an executive at Music, the company behind elevator music, it just says it all. This is music as social programming. It's designed to manage how tired workers get and to make sure we're all consuming things in an orderly fashion. But, Attali doesn't just leave us in that kind of depressing place. He saw a fourth stage starting to bubble up from the mess of repetition, a whole new network he called composition. And this, he thought, held the key to our escape. So what in the world is composition? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It's about making music just for the joy of doing it, completely outside of any commercial logic. It's not about selling a record or playing for a crowd. It's about creating your own language and reconnecting the act of making music with your own pleasure. And this is where it gets really mind-bending. In this new world of composition, that wall between the artist and the audience just completely crumbles. Listening becomes an act of creating. Everyone gets to be a musician, a composer of their own reality. Think about garage bands, DJs, remix culture, or even just you messing around and improvising for fun. And that leaves us with Attali's final challenge to all of us. As technology gives more and more of us the tools to create, what are we going to do? Are we going to move into a future of active composition where we write our own scores? Or are we just stuck in a loop, forever consuming the echoes of what's already been done? Attali's work suggests that choice is ours, and that's really something to think about.